Hey guys! So this scene started with the scene from last week where everyone was laying everything on the table and putting up or saying or speaking up about their grievances. And so basically what happened was Susu and Jeffrey kept going back and forth, and Blake looks like he was having a good old time. His facial expressions were giving me, I'm enjoying every minute of it. And so Tommy basically said, I hope everyone has gotten everything they needed to say out in the open, which I was like, okay, cool, whatever. You know, you were stirring up some drama, but okay. I guess you have to make the TV show interesting after all. So Tommy reminded everyone that they needed to eat first, but for two people, it would be their last supper. When I say I chuckled, I was like, not the last supper. On the bright side, for whoever is leaving, at least they would get an opportunity to eat before. So I'm here for that. Over on the other side, Blake and Susu were having a conversation. And so, of course, Blake is telling Susu he's happy that she stood up for him and all that good stuff. I'm like, Susu, I'm not here for it at all. You are definitely advocate Sue, like Jeffrey said, but I'm not here for it. Anyways, over on the other side, Jeffrey and Mr. coming back from COVID is back, right? So Andre starts having a conversation with Jeffrey. Jeffrey, of course, is being that vulnerable feminine woman, saying, I hope you were proud of the way I handled things. Andre is good at supporting people. He held her hand, he gave her a peck on the cheek, and I just thought that was very sweet. He handled it very maturely. I also thought it was very interesting how Jeffrey was like, what do you think? How did I handle it? It definitely showed me that Jeffrey is one of those people who needs reassurance, especially when it comes to conflict. So when I tell you, girl, that conversation shifted ASAP to Morgan and Anthony. And so Morgan was like to Anthony, like, I feel like you want to be chased and queens don't chase. I'm like, you better say it, honey. I ain't gonna chase nobody but a bag, honey. Of course, they were having a conversation with Anthony. So Mercia was also there. They were having a conversation with Anthony that he sort of likes to go for like the low effort kind of girl. And he's not really putting effort to nurture his connections with women. So then things got a little bit heated. Andre pulled Mercedes to the side and she initially wasn't having it. So she's like, all right, let's have a chat. So they went to the side and Andre was like, why did you not check on me? I'm like, okay, direct. And she was like, I honestly thought out of sight, out of mind. I'm like, okay, say less. Do you know what? Andre seemed genuinely hurt. And I feel like all he was expecting from Mercedes was an apology and some explanation. And Mercedes was not giving it. She was just like, out of sight, out of mind. I'm like, girl, that is cold. Did you say anything else after that? Like, I don't know what was in the food, but this episode is like everyone is going at it. So Morgan and Tony were having a conversation. And so Morgan is telling Tony that he needs to tone it down with the ladies and that she knows he walks the room and whatnot, but he needed to tone it down with the ladies. And then she was talking about her concerns about the fact that he's very flirtatious and that she doesn't want to have to kill him. I'm like, girl, or hurt him. I'm like, girl, that's a bit aggressive, honey. Like, what is going on? She comes across a little aggressive. I like her, but she's a little feisty, ain't she? But then she smiled. I'm like, it's the crazy ones that do that. Like, they say crazy-ish, but then they smile about it. So you're not sure if it's legit, if they really want to kill you, or if they're playing with you. She is serious, honey. Tony, take it from me. So, of course, Tommy was asking the guys, who's your top connection? So Jeffrey's name came up with Blue, Andre, and Mark Anthony. And then, of course, he asked the other people, but, I don't care about that. But let's move on to Blake. Now, that's something I do care about. So, of course, he's asking Blake, and Blake is like, yeah, Susu, that hasn't changed. And then he said, she works for me. I'm like, it's because you can control her and she'll be your guard dog, bulldog any day. That's what that is. So the scene kept jumping between like the guys' deliberation and the women's deliberation. And so with the women, Tommy was asking, who don't they have a connection with? And so Mark Anthony's name came up a few times, actually. Blake's name also came up as well. I'm like, Blake should have been gone. Like, what's going on here, guys? Anthony's name also came up, and it seems like the girls had similar concerns. He's not really coming through, he's not really pursuing them as such. And so, yeah, he's in their bottom. So back over on the other side to the guys. So Tommy starts asking, who are you not connecting with? And so Lyndon was like, Sue-Ann. A few of the other guys also mentioned Sue-Ann. So when it got to Blake's turn, who don't you connect with? Blake was like, he's like, first is Jeffrey, to have someone blatantly lie. I'm like, honey, you're trying to clean up your act now. We don't believe you. So Janique's name also came up a few times as well. So Tommy basically then called Anthony and Mark Anthony out. They were on the chopping block. So they saved Anthony, and then Mark Anthony they saved with the lifeline. Now, Morgan said exactly how I feel. Why the hell is Blake still here? That is exactly how I feel. I'm convinced that the producers probably put Blake there to stir up Ish, because it doesn't make any sense. He should have been gone since the first episode, seriously. So in terms of the girls, Zonique got eliminated. It's just weird because Zonique actually had some connections, but Sue-Ann did not have connections. So why is she still there, for goodness sake? I feel like they've placed them on the show for the drama, honestly. So then Tommy was like, so this week there wouldn't be any eliminations. Like, everyone just needs to really get in there because they're almost at the halfway point now. And so Anthony decided to invite Susu over to his house. My first impression, the house looks lovely. Okay, Anthony. So Sue-Ann just came with it and she was like, am I on your list? And he's like, list of? And so she's like, people you're interested in. And so, of course, Anthony tells her that she's on the list. And they start talking about that. Of course, he did not necessarily assure her that she was top on that list, and I don't think she liked that. Over on the other side, Jeffrey was having a good old chat with Mark Anthony. They looked very cozy. Mark Anthony was like looking into her eyes like, honey, I want you now. I'm like, all right, Mark. So Jeffrey starts talking about how, she wants to be more vulnerable, but at the same time, like, she also does not want something that her vulnerability is used against her. And then he's like, I like your soft side. I want you to be soft and let me be the strong one. I'm like, oh, that is so cute. Like, I need a guy to tell me that because I don't want to be the strong one no more. I want to be soft, honey. So she opened up to him that she has Crohn's disease and that sometimes the reason she's so positive is because she just has to be positive and because she doesn't want anything to trigger her condition. That is so sad. But he definitely looked like he was listening. That I really liked. My thing is, that date looked boring. Like, there really is no connection there. I just think they're trying to force it. However, I guess they decided to dance and it looks like they enjoyed themselves in the end. So I guess the dates initially started rough and then, started well, then it got rough, then it ended on a good note. So, well, I don't know. I don't really see them ending up together, if I'm being honest. I think she would choose her Blake. Over on the other side with Mark Anthony and Jeffrey. So they were talking about her Crohn's disease and Mark Anthony asked her how the children deal with it. So Jeffrey was saying that, they just say, mommy, you feel better soon. And they just try to be supportive. Bless those kids, man. Like, it must really suck to see your mother going through some really difficult, something really difficult. Sorry. This hit really close to home. Not my mom, but my grandma has been really unwell today. So that really just got me. But anyways, moving on. I actually think he handled it well because he didn't just think about how is she dealing with it. He thought about how are the children dealing with it. And then also tried to give her some reassurance and just told her that she's doing a good job in terms of her having a good outlook and all of that. And then they kissed and I just thought that was cute. It just felt like a really reassuring time together. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually like them together. But I also like him with Mercedes. Oh, goodness me. I like them both. It looks like Mark Anthony has been busy. So after his date with Jeffrey, he went over and had a date with Miss Mercedes. And so, of course, we've seen them like talk and sort of get into it. And like, we've seen the chemistry, but we've never really seen them have like a solid, serious conversation. So they started talking about Mark Anthony trying to get his private flying license. And they were talking about he was expressing how he fell in love with flying. And she was also like, oh, that resonates with her because she's also trying to get her private flying license as well. And that's the thing, they really connect on that flying thing as well because they both want the same thing and they both eventually will probably have very similar schedules, so they technically just work in that way, but whether or not there is enough there is what we need to wait and see. So over on the other side, Morgan and Tony had a little date. And so this is the first time I actually realized that Tony is balding at the center of his head. That's just a side point I just noticed today and I was like, oh, probably something to mention. But anyway, so they were having a conversation and Tony was like, oh, so, what do you think about me? And she's like, well, you're a wild card. I'm like, okay. So she's like, she likes him, but then she's also very terrified of him. I'm like, okay. Because she doesn't know what he's capable of. And then you know how Tony is, just there smiling, doing the smooth Tony thing. So, of course, she's like, she doesn't want to put all her eggs in the Tony basket and then be out here looking stupid in the face. I'm like, okay. So then she's like, oh, you played too much. And then he's like, no. And then he's like, I'm focused. And she's like, make sure you're focused on the right thing. I'm like, girl, you are giving too much aggressive energy, my love. Like, I love Morgan. I will be the first to say it. But the way she's coming, I'm not feeling the way she's coming at him like that. I'm not liking that. I'm like, I don't know. It just makes me feel like if someone was coming at me like that, I'll be like, girl, you're in the boss of me. So back to the other people, Mercedes and Mac Anthony. They were having their own little giggle and she's like, oh, she can't wink. I'm like, girl, that used to be me. I understand. And then she tried to wink and it looks like a twitch. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, don't do that again, sis. But between them, it looks like they have that really playful, fun banter. Like, they just have that, like, getting along like a house on fire thing. I feel like that's what it's very much given. So then Mercedes starts rubbing Mark Anthony on his arms. I'm like, okay, he got guns. And then he's like, well, if you keep rubbing me like that, it's not a genie that will pop up. I'm like, ooh, did you see her face? She's like, what? And then they laugh about it and it's cute. I'm like, she is like all gums, man. Like, she is smiling at everything that he says. They have that really playful banter that I like. So then they moved us over back to the date Morgan was having with Mr. Tony. And so, of course, they start talking about Lyndon. And Morgan is like, oh, I love how Lyndon doesn't back down from you. He's always like, he still keeps talking about me in front of you and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, oh, come over here. I'm like, Lyndon knows how to play the game. Lyndon is like, I'm here. Nobody's going to disrupt me having time with my connection. I don't care if she kisses you. That ain't going to stop me having time with her. So, of course, Tony was like, well, I feel sorry for him. I'm like, bro, feel sorry for yourself. You ain't got to feel sorry for a grown-ass man that does not need your sympathy, honey. But it's okay. Tony definitely does not like to lose. I get that impression. He's like, nah, man, I'm winning this. If it was a game, I'm winning. So then he sort of brings up his other connection. She's like, she doesn't care. She doesn't want to know. And I'm like, good girl. I'm actually proud of you, sis. You're like, I don't care about that. And then she's like, the last time when we were at the Advert Cafe, I basically told you to narrow down your connections and you did. And now I'm telling you to clean it up. I'm like, okay, girl. She is very much giving boss babe energy. So then they took us back to the date with Mercedes and Mark Anthony. And so Mercedes was out here looking at Mark Anthony like he was the snack, honey. She had her tongue pulled out and everything. And so she leaned forward and then they kissed. And it was like, who was like the juicy kiss? I'm like, okay. She was like tongue and everything. I'm like, all right, girl. she put all of her mouth in it. I'm like, okay, sister. So then they moved back to Morgan and Tony. And so she was like, so how do you feel about me? And then he's like, we look good together. I'm like, is that the response to the question? Tony, there is something about you that I'm starting to now question. It could be editing, but if it's not, why would you say we look good together? How do you feel about me? We look good together. How is that the response to the question? Like, somebody help me. Is it just me? Because this ain't it. And then they had that like little cute juicy kiss at the end. I'm like, alrighty. I guess everyone is kissing everyone now. So finally, the scene that we've all been waiting for, Morgan and Blake. So they had their little sit down, and Morgan was like, okay, I ain't gonna put too much effort. I'm wearing my jeans, honey. And I'm like, fair enough, sis. Don't waste a good outfit on Blake. So Morgan was like trying to find out how he felt after she expressed what she said at the mixer. And so he apologized, and he was like, he doesn't know exactly what he said that brought up that emotion for her. So then she's like, but you apologize. How can you apologize for something if you did not know what you did? I'm like, girl, I can't actually fault that logic. But I think he was apologizing for if he made her feel that way. But I also understand Morgan, because when people apologize, but they're not really apologizing because they know what they did is wrong, they're just apologizing to keep the peace, it gets a bit confusing. So fair enough. So he was trying to explain to her that if he hurt her, even if he didn't intentionally do it, he could apologize for that. And then she's like, I didn't say you hurt me. And he's like, I can see I hurt you. I'm like, she's like, I said you were unkind. I didn't say you hurt me. She's like, what you did was attack me. When I was talking about wanting kids, and then you said that your exact words were, you're not going to be happy until you have kids. So you're not going to be happy until you have kids. I'm like, oh, wow. And then she's like, I don't know where you got that from. Because like she's the most happiest now than she had ever been, basically. And then she was like, you also said that 80% of what I want, I'm not going to have if I have a child. I'm like, Blake, did you say that? So she's like, I want to know who hurt you. I'm like, oops. So he's like, no one hurt him. And she was saying in her confessionals that he comes across as someone that has been hurt. And she's like, considering he has 3 baby mamas, then probably all 3 of them. I'm like, oops, sis. Morgan is savage. Now, one thing she did say that I agree with is that Blake needs some professional help. I couldn't agree more. And then he brought up the whole Jeffrey situation. And so they started talking about the whole Jeffrey situation, and he was like, oh, he feels like it's a cancer that kept coming back. And so he just felt like he needed to address it. And then she was like, that's how I feel about you. I'm like, what? Morgan chose violence. What? She's like, I don't think you're a benign cancer. I think you're malignant. Wow. She is just savage. And it's the way she said it with a straight face. She didn't even have a sinister look about it. It's just like, she looks like someone that is genuinely telling you about yourself. I don't know if that makes any sense. Did you guys get that impression as well when you watched the episode? And so she's like, I don't think you're being honest by being here. I don't think you have honest intentions. And I think you're lying to these women. It's like, these are genuine people looking for love, and you're toying with their emotions. And I couldn't agree more. The way Blake is playing with Susu, Susu, I hope you get out, because it's about to be a mess for you, hun. So Blake was basically like, we don't have a connection or whatnot. It is what it is. And that's where it ended. Please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this episode. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.